Hello, everybody. Welcome. I see people are joining. We'll get started here in just a couple of moments. Hope you like the festive slot, snowflakes. It's not snowing here in Virginia Beach, but maybe it's snowing where you are. But if it's snowing where you are, you're probably sick of it snowing, so maybe you don't want to see that. But here at the beach, it's not snowing. My name's Robert. I'll be kind of hosting this thing. We'll kind of get started here probably, I don't know, 60 seconds or so. I do have some formal announcements to make, but again, look at that slide. Wow, so festive. Um, yeah, we'll get started. I know that the question kind of chat area has been disabled, so if you have a question, try and put it in the QA. Try and put it in the QA, and we can get some eyes on it. We got plenty of people on this side of the line. We got a couple of people on your side of the line, and hopefully we can all do some learning as well as some luncheon. You know. Um, yeah, 30 more seconds and I'll kind of give my message. I just want to see if someone will show up by 12:03 or more people will show up by 12:03. But as soon as my little clock says 12:03, I will start it. Some questions already jumping into the QA. Thank you very much. How do we do a unit test when there's forms involved? Sure, no problem, man. We can definitely take a look at that. No problem at all. All right. Like I said, as soon as my little clock down there at the bottom says 12:03, I'm getting started. We'll start with Alexander's question. Unit testing, forms, luncheon, learning. We're gonna go the distance there, but I do want to give other folks a couple minutes because I do have an important announcement to make. There it is, 12:03. Okay. Well, welcome. Again, my name is Robert. I am on the trade team. This is the last day of Lunch and Learns for this week, but also unique announcement. It is also the last Lunch and Learn we're going to do for a little bit because we're going to take a week off next week for, the holidays, however you choose to celebrate. That next week is kind of a holiday week for a lot of people, so we're not going to be doing Lunch and Learn next week just because we have holidays here in the U.S. related to holidays, man. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So, but again, I will kind of remind everyone in the end, but just remember, and I'll send out a notification here in just a couple of minutes to all Lunch and Learn folk. Um, to all Lunch and Learn folk, I'll send out an announcement for you, but just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. So, um, yeah, so let's start with the first one. And then we'll do Tina. We'll do your question next, but we'll start with Alexander just because he got his in pretty quick, right as the bell started. Um, cool. Let me unmute you. I generally know the contact there, Alexander, but I have two of you here, so I'm just gonna I don't know, unmute both, I guess. Um, I don't know. I don't know why it's two, but hey, I got you in there, man. So you were asking about unit testing with forms involved. What is some context there? Like what are you trying to test? The functionality of active form flows? Are you trying to test whether the form passes data within a flow? Like what are you trying to test there?
Yeah, so I have a a quotes system that we built out, and essentially on the form is like where you put the type of quote it is, the pricing, and the items, right? And I know I can set up an automated, basically like pass through option that like kind of just passes data whenever I'm in a unit test. But the issue with that is I can't switch because the data is fixed. I can't like switch it out. Like I can't switch the type of quote. Like I might want to do we have structured quotes and we have job quotes. So sometimes I want to actually switch the type of quote it is, but I can't do that if I'm fixing it, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that does make some kind of sense. Let me
And
just.
then at the
I'm gonna.
end of it, I want to make sure that all the data, basically, I know what the data should be at the end. And so my truth is basically going to go through all the data and make sure that each part is correct, like it's all labeled out correctly.
This is utilizing a form, as you said. So
Yeah, it's got like other parts to it, but there's a form in
yeah.
the middle of it, so kind of pops up.
Whoa, look at that spelling, man. Brutal. Hopefully that'll save there. All right. So you're saying, just to kind of clarify again, you have because you're testing and building and testing and building, um, you have this stuff pre-populated so you don't have to fill it out every single time?
No, I don't have it pre-populated. I just no, I don't have it pre-populated.
Okay. So then what is the, okay, so maybe I guess I just am, I'm gonna
If
draw on the
you
screen.
if you take a like if you exit out of this one, there's the option to have it have a fixed like data
Yeah,
that comes through.
simulation mode. Talk about
Yeah,
simulation
simulation.
mode.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
yeah. That's in the flow designer. If you go to the right, Robert, and go all the way to outcomes, that's where that's at. I'm sorry, testing and simulation. My bad.
Yeah. So you're running it this way, just so it manually runs down a path?
Well, I'm planning to run that way. I'm actually not that great at unit testing just yet. I'm
Okay.
trying to. We made the mistake of well, we built this whole thing out, and we built zero unit tests going forward. And it seems like the way decisions was meant to be done is that every time you make a node, you make unit test, and then you know, kind of just go from there. We didn't do that, so now we have to go back and make a ton of unit tests.
So I'm just going to kind of draw just so I can make sure we know what the equation we're working with here. You have
Hmm.
you have expected outcomes at your red end step that you are expecting while you're building, right?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. You have data that is
Hmm.
coming from where? From another flow, from a fetch entities, or from the
From the unit
form.
test, it'll be coming from the unit test technically, I guess.
So that would be probably coming out of here,
Yeah, out of the
input into the
green.
flow,
Yep, yep,
out of
yep,
the
yep.
green. Okay, so we have inputs here.
Hmm.
So we have inputs and we have outputs. And you want to, in the form relation to this, is you're just saying there's a form in there, or you want to
Hmm.
actually test something related to the form and the way the form, um, is the form doing the work, or what is, how's the form
So
relation?
in the form is where you actually fill out some of the data. Some
Okay,
of the data is filled out there, like the type of quote it is, which I
sure.
would like to test on all three quotes. And so
Yeah,
I'm trying
man.
to figure out how to do that.
So what I'll do, just because you kind of mentioned that
Hmm.
are still kind of learning the unit testing. I'm going to start kind of
Hmm.
at the front of how unit testing works from a real simplistic, and then we'll kind of zoom out into something a little more advanced, just so we can kind
Okay.
of make sure we're all on the same page here. And I can do it relatively quickly. Um, how a unit test is going to work is you're going to have inputs into a flow and you're going to have an expected outcome. I'll pull this back down just so it looks a little nicer. You have inputs into the flow. So let's say for this particular use case, I'm making an input called name, right? And I'm going to kind of do a little bit of bypassing here. I have this input called name. When you're making a unit test, if I go to debug and I go to unit test and I go to create a new one, right? I can name this and called name equals name. I'll say name equals Rob for now. Let's just we'll actually we won't make it so useful. So how a unit test is going to work is you are with this rule, you are kind of trying to set it up so that the data that comes out on your red end step is that data. So what you can do is you can find a spot. So you let's actually add an outcome path here just so we can kind of give ourselves a door out of the room. Well, let me save this with no data. Nice. And we'll say, okay, coming out of this, again, I am expecting, and I'm going to call this name out of flow, just so we're not selecting from flow, we're not kind of bypassing it. We have a random variable here, right? How this is going to end up working is you can say, okay, name out of flow. When I go to debug, from a simplistic standpoint, you can say, I want outcome name out of flow to equal, and we'll say Rob, right? If I pass out that data somehow through any number of ways as Rob, it will pass. So like even if I go here and I go, okay, will this pass? Right? It's just a constant. That's and the most simplistic kind of approach to it. This should, whether I do anything here or not, this unit test should pass. and I kind of run it from up here as well, kind of just get a generic check mark, I think. So it failed, right? I can look at maybe why it failed,
You didn't provide the input into it.
but I was still just passing out a hard constant. Doesn't matter what the input was.
No, you set up the rule to check. So you one step. See, there's his name. Oh, too fast. No, that's the rule you're checking. See that name right there? Put Rob, and then it should. I think it should pass now. Save it. And then let's see. No.
Yeah, so I just got to mess with it a little tiny bit, and we'll figure it out together here. But I was just saying, does the outcome done name out of flow equal Rob? And I made that a hard constant, so it should be passing. Maybe I'm having a little bit of a brain fart here, but Rob, name out, flow, name out of flow. Rob is a constant.
Does your check have a space in it?
Ooh,
Could
let's
you?
go. Let's check it, man. Let's start here because I'm already in here. Nope, not on this one.
What's the select from flow? So name. Could you just select from flow on that?
Here?
Yep. Select from flow. Flow or sorry, flow data now. It's different.
Yeah. I
And
put name.
name. Yeah, if name equals the same.
But then we'd have to pass out here, then we'd have to go this way. And not
Then
make
I
this a
wonder if.
constant.
Well, I think it should check the value at that point, right? So we can go ahead and debug, run the unit test, click on, just click on that, run it. And then see on the, yeah, click done. We should see the unit test.
Yeah.
No, it's not there. We had it before, but for some reason it's not showing the unit test like it did.
Try one more time here and figure out what
Yeah.
is.
If not, we'll take this offline for you, Alexander. We'll create you a small project, kind of showing the different ways to do it. Because you can get it from a constant and from flow. There's just something in the unit testing that we're just misconfiguring, or maybe something changed between the versions.
Okay,
Yeah, so
sounds
you
good.
yeah, you're gonna essentially that was the logic point. I'm gonna give you about 60 more seconds, is that you're basically making a rule saying this variable at the end should be this thing. If you're using a form and you wanted to test things dynamically, you say, oh, I know I have various inputs coming in. I have a series of expected inputs and I have a series of expected outputs. You would write that into the rule. So something like Rob equals Rob or whatever the thing is, Jared equals Jared, horrible writing, sorry. Jared equals Jared. And Jared equals Jared. And then if you had the form kind of utilizing that, or you wanted the form to interface with that, what you would do is see how I have name here as given input. I would just make this form name so that whatever I put in as this comes through the form. I can just click OK on it and it's still just kind of passing that data through. Like you're using the form as a mediary if you wanted the form to be a checker in the middle in some capacity. But yeah, like if you don't mind, Alexander, I'm gonna help I'll help out one other person. And it doesn't look like we have any other questions, and if not, I'll come back and I'll figure this out live on stream here,
Okay.
live on camera. But just let me just because I think the other one should be relatively quick. The question is just talking about what is decisions, and I think that's from Tina. And if you have anyone else has any more questions, Smith, Grant, feel free to put them in the Q&A. It says anonymous on there. Tina, I think I muted both Alexanders. I imagine you're in one of those kind of situations, but essentially decisions is going to be used for business process automation. So on the kind of lowest explanation of it is that you have data that you want to have perform an action. So if the data comes in as this, it comes out as this, or if the data comes in as this happens. It's a lot of if something, then something. And obviously there's a million iterations of that. If these many things happen, this single thing happens. If these many things happen, these many things happen. But essentially, most of decisions is going to be built around data coming in, whether it be from an API call, from a form that you generate for a user, from a database somewhere that you might already have that exists in another place. You have data that comes in, and because of that data, whether it be we pass it through rules, we pass it through truth tables, we pass it through a number of things. something will happen ideally, because if you're just passing in data and then passing out the data, same data, there's no real point in having it in here. But it's really going to be, like I said, built around business process automation. So from decisions from a high level standpoint is you have a business process and you want it to be automated. That's where decisions comes in with this kind of plain text, interface and graphical user interface. You can organize flows to do stuff a lot more complicated. So just as a quick example, let's go with something relatively quick here. This is kind of a big ugly view of there, but essentially here's a real streamlined process. You might have a process in your organization to purchase something. You want it to be approved or denied by managers or by an auto approve process. So in this one, we have a form that generates for the user, looks like this, where they can request to buy something. When the request comes through, there's a quick little rule that just says, hey, is that less than $500? If true, we're going to auto approve that loan. If it's not true, we're going to figure out what department they're in based on, again, a rules engine. If they are in professional services, then assign it to the manager associated with it. And then that manager will get a form to approve or deny that request. So again, the whole process is automated. The only things that need to be manually figured out is the original purchase and the manager approval. But a lot of our organizations and a lot of people that use decisions, they might use it as a headless operation. So there's not a form, they're not doing it. It's just something that runs, data comes in, data comes out. An example of that might be something like this, where you have an API that can be pinged with information, and it will just provide whether or not that claim is valid or invalid. So data comes in, and then we run a series of rules based on that data, and then the recipient will receive whether or not the claim was a valid medical claim, valid dental claim, based on certain rules. Claim date must be within the last 60 days, things along those lines. So again, business process automation. How do you make tools for decisions? It's going to be in flows. I'm assuming by tools you mean applications. If you're talking about making steps, there's plenty of options for that, but I think that's a little more advanced than something we want to kind of get into right now. But yeah, you're going to use a flow. A flow is going to be the tool of decisions more often than not. And again, flows are kind of in this world where you have data coming in and you have data coming out. So data comes in, actions are performed in the middle of the area, and then data is passed out of this room here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of float on, and if I have more time, I'll come back for you there, Keenan. I'm going to move on with Grant. Is there anything available from the App Store or a project that deals with organizational charts? In the future, we are wanting to build an org chart related to all of our different positions and who they report to. Man, that's a good one. Let me see if I can unmute you. I generally got you on what you're talking about, but it's always nice to kind of just have this be more conversational. Off the top of my head, I don't think we have anything in the App Store, but I would love to look with you guys. And for everyone who's not aware, we do have Decision Solutions Marketplace. You can Google it. It's probably the fastest way to find it. And it gives you a little bit of a high level overview of some kind of built-in stuff. I'm not sure of the graphical charting that you might want, like an org chart. There are plenty of tools out there that are free that we have nothing to do with that you can probably just Google. But let's kind of just look here and see if anything here kind of stands out to me in terms of building an org chart in a way that's effective and scalable. If you have a database, right? If you have a database of data, you can make reports, you can make charts, but it's not going to be extremely linear and as nimble as you might want it to be with a full scale org chart where you can make quick and dynamic changes.
Off the top of my head, the only thing we have that's similar to an org chart, Grant, is the hierarchical view. Robert, if you can go to our the performance dashboard. So system settings, administration, system tools, and profiler. And can you expand the ORM right there where it says type ORM, Robert, at the first column, and you expand that? That's what that utilizes, a hierarchical chart view, and that's kind of the only view that we have out of the box. There is a way where could you go into a project, Robert, and just create a page of some sort? And I'll show you guys a specific thing called a diagram tile. And that's something you can utilize for your process that you could create like a hierarchical view, but it's not very scalable. Like you would have to, let's say you created a new department, you'd have to like then manually add that onto it. And there's not like a, I mean, well, yeah, there's not really like a way you could display that dynamically, but you could drag that on over. You pick the diagram tile and then just create new, name it whatever. And then what you do that is now you can create, you have all your different annotations and shapes. So let's grab a shape. Let's say then you can grab, you know, then there's a circle or a rectangle that you can utilize to show like, hey, this is the top of the org or who goes to where. That's the only way that we have. We don't really have any easy way to do it. I don't think.
Does that help you out, Grant, at all? Can we bring any clarity to that for you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, that brings a little bit more clarity because that was something we were wondering, like, can you have it where it expands dynamically and stuff? But that was kind of something I was wondering too, is that even possible to do that?
Yeah.
Nothing that's going to expand dynamically besides
Okay.
that hierarchical chart that Jared was showing, where you could have roles, but it's not something so linear. Um, yeah, decisions is great at a lot of automated processing, but when it comes to like creating graphics and stuff, you're not going to have and I think the way you worded it was something along those lines. You wanted a graphic chart. Um, yeah, an org chart. It's not going to be the most powerful tool for that. I mean, you could output that data into, like, you could use decisions to interact with the database, output that data as an API call to an organization, to another company that can take that, format that data, whether it be in JSON XML, and then make an org chart for you. But again, by the time you do all that work, if your org chart is going to be kind of static and not changing all the time, you might be better off just manually maintaining it. I
Okay.
didn't know about this diagram tile. This is fun.
What you could do, I mean, this is going to be a little bit more like if you want something dynamic, it's possible. You could probably leverage some Excel and some Excel generation steps, utilizing the index and
Oh
index
yeah.
match formulas.
Wow.
You just have to like traverse like that. That's untrodden territory for creating. Like it's theoretically possible. You just have to like use some of the Excel steps. You can use some Excel steps to map the formula on and things like that. But that's a way you might be able to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we do have some information on our like YouTube channel about that Excel stuff. If you go to our channel, we just made one like 10 days ago. Look at that, 77 views. Great thumbnail. But it kind of talks about lots of options in terms of formatting with Excel, and you can make something. But again, it's not going to be, um, it's not going to be like a pretty like Visio style chart. It's not going to be like this essentially. All right, I'm going to keep on kind of rocking here. Thank you guys, and I'll try to flip back. How would you go about making a chart where it shows who reports to who in our organization? Yeah, just to follow up on Grant, so I didn't leave you on unanswered question. Reporting is a great option. You could have a reporting in a field of who, manager, as a field on a report. You could say this employee, you click on, there's a field that says manager in a data structure somewhere, and it shows you there. And then who reports to them is another field. You could build it out that way. Or like Jared kind of talked about earlier, that's just hierarchical view. It's a hard word to say. Hierarchical. That's a tough one. But yeah, in this world where you could say, okay, Robert who reports to Robert? These 4 databases. Who reports to Jared? This group of one database. That kind of thing. All right, we'll keep on rolling here. And thank you guys for the awesome questions. Samantha, we have one. Hi, we were trying to use the XML structure, and it works for a couple of nodes where I can configure to get that node /col, but for a few others, I cannot seem to clearly see the path. This is a valid XML we use. We were able to successfully update the few nodes that we see clearly using serialize, deserialize, etc. Is there a better way to reel the nodes, to read, I guess, to read the nodes? Am I missing something here? I don't know. Let's do the same old unmute. I am not sure. So, and stuff like that where you have partial functionality, it kind of works, it kind of doesn't. We're trying to figure out the nuances of it. There's only so much I can do kind of here swinging in the dark, trying to figure out what might be the missed section. I'll put my brain against it for a moment, and I hate to be the guy that immediately says try and submit a support ticket, but for some things that is just going to be your path of least resistance. And the best use of your time as well. So let's take a quick look and see if I can figure it out quickly. Structure. So you're trying to use an XML structure. I have to make one here. But yeah, can you just go ahead and clarify what's going on there, Smith?
Yeah, so when something is not repetitive, right, then I can clearly see those nodes and everything works great. I can access it, change the value, do whatever we need to do. But there are some portions of it which is like in a repetitive loop inside a particular node. Those are the ones I can see that I can see something which says all arrays in a value and things like that. So should I say take the fifth one in that, or how can I go? It clearly doesn't say what it is to me. How can I be sure I'm updating the right value column or something like that, right node?
Yeah, so again, I hate to kind of go down that path immediately. Yeah, go ahead, Jared.
So wait, say that one more time for me. So you have is the question I have like in decisions, whatever list object you have, it just says all items, but you can't get the sixth item out of a list of 10, right? And you want to update. Was that the question or?
We're using an XML and we use all the
Right.
XML structure and all those things, yes. And then we
Yeah.
can get, when we read that XML, right? So we
Right.
can get to the node when it's not like in a particular node, there's no repetitive sections. So such kind
Okay.
of values, it's easy. It's easy to see that it comes, clearly it's identifying those nodes, and then I can easily do whatever I need to do. But if
Okay.
there is a section in a node which is kind of repeating, right? Repetitive, that value, if I have to get to one part of it and update the value or do something, then it doesn't clearly tell us that go to this place, or it doesn't give me that particular node name.
And
It
by
just
node name, you're talking about the XML tag property or whatever it is,
correct,
right?
exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it doesn't clearly give me that.
If it's a list, because I guess you're saying there's a property that
Yes.
comes as
Yes.
that is usually a single value,
If
but
some, yes, if it's
sometimes it comes out of the list, and then it's how do I get the value I want?
correct.
Is there any distinction of what criteria of which value you want? Because I assume you don't want both of them. That's the assumption I'm operating under.
I mean, it's got a different tag name. So, but it doesn't show me that name. Yeah, like, the subnodes kind of a thing. It's got different property name there, but it doesn't show me those properties.
But it doesn't show you those properties.
Mm-hmm.
And you're running this as a flow, and the flow is outputting this?
Yes, it's a flow.
Okay, and then we input and output. So are you able to look at the input and output data of it
I
to see what's in that list? Because I'm not sure what to recommend, because I don't know what's the criteria I just don't know your data. I don't know what's the criteria to filter on, or to like say I want this one or this one.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it's just go ahead.
From this conversation, right, gives me another idea. Can you tell me how I can debug that thing? Instead of going, how can I say output this particular property, and how can I see the output? Like, if I just do
Absolutely. Robert, do you mind if I drive real quick?
No,
Let
please.
me
Yeah,
get
please. Thank you,
some.
Jared. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. No. Oops. And then I'll go to screen one. I think I have. Do I have XML? Can anyone see my screen? Should say just decisions.
Yes, indeed.
Alrighty. So, all right. I'm gonna get some. XML structure with properties. I'm gonna get an XML. So we can see, hey, there we go, perfect. All right, so here's my XML. Right, so this is my XML. I'm going to go ahead and let me create a data structure with this XML, and so you can deserialize it or serialize it, right? Create XML, create types from XML. I'm going to create my book. And this is my book structure, is what I'm going to call it. And we're going to go ahead and all right, cool. So I should have my book structure. Awesome. All right. So now if I did create this book, right, or I got data coming in, that's of the book structure. Right. So we'll say this is, oh, I want the entire structure. Can I get the entire structure? Is that, looks like that's right. I think that's right. We're going to see how it goes. And this is going to be my book, is what I want to call this. So if I get data that comes in, and let's say this data that's being, I'm going to give it some constants here. Right. This would happen automatically in your thing, but let's say the author is, oh, it's so weird. Jeremy, and then I say the description is how to write a flow in decisions. We do genre, right? All the stuff, right? We'll say tech. All right. So I got some properties, and so when I look at this, what will happen here is, let's see, let me go ahead. I'm just going to pass this into a create data step just so I can illustrate this idea of debugging it. Book. And then we'll say this is book. And then I just have to say flow data, my book. And then let's go ahead. And so when you debug this, what decisions does is you're going to see it not in XML, but you're going to see it in JSON. Do a decision does just switches it to JSON. But what you can see here is if you input output this, you can easily see, even though it's not an XML tag, right? Like it's not the book is more up here, and then the title and the author there. I can easily see, okay, this is Jeremy, this is this. So let's say if it does change for some reason, you can input output that structure or global debugger it, like, right? I don't know how it's coming into your system, but let's say it's something that you can't really debug the UI from. You can show the global debugger, right? And I'm going to turn this on or turn this off for right now. Move this here. Save that. I think was it test data, I think is on it. Yeah, it is. And so if I have my global debugger on and then I just run this flow, right, you'll see this pop up. And then I'm going to say, Jared. And then I'm going to say run. And then boom, over here, I can be able to see that this thing ran from the global debugger. And then I can look at the inputs and outputs and say, oh, hey, this book passed in with just Jared. Right. And so that will give you kind of the insight into what's being viewed in that flow. So that's just a couple of ways that I would try to handle it to try to figure out what's the data that we're dealing with for this process, so you can see it. I don't know. Did that help?
Yes, I think
Okay.
I'll try something like that because I'm sure it's reading because it's doing for a couple of things, but I'll try something and see where how to access those other things which it doesn't clearly tell us.
Gotcha. Yeah, the
Thank
global debugger will be your friend in that because it sounds like you have more of an automated process that just runs in the background, and that will help you kind of find that, and then you can look at its inputs, outputs, debugging there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Hey Smith, a quick disclaimer, we don't recommend running this on a production environment, just so you know. It can slow down the environment, so when you're using the global debugger, it's better to try and test this on your test environment, just so you're aware.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I had another question, but I can ask after anybody else, if anybody else has another question.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would love to answer your question. Let me just do one quick re-loop just because I know that Alexander's been in here. I just want to, I feel bad because I kind of started the answer and then never got to a conclusion. So on Alexander, I know I have some unit tests built out, so I just want to show you like kind of how one that's supposed to be working is working, so I'm not floundering in that. But essentially, let's say I think I have some built in here. Let's go to flows real fast. I know this is kind of a big, ugly environment. Apologies here. I think I have some built out in here. Maybe, nope. I guess I'd have to have some inputs into the
Are
flow.
you sharing your screen or no?
Oh, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. Thank you. All right, let's do the whole screen there. Let's find some. I think I've got some built in, some of these subflows here. I am pretty sure I do. Well, I know for a fact I know where some are. Here you go. I got you. Now that I think about it. Here is the most simplified version of the unit test, just so I can bring some kind of clarity on how it's going to work. Let's find this split string. This one. Close and jumps two. Split string. Here we go. So essentially, how this is supposed to work is, again, you have given inputs, and like you said, you have a handful of scenarios that are going to come into your flow, and you have a handful of scenarios answers that you want to come out. Of course, this one thought it did. Assessment flow. This one almost certainly will. Perfect. So you can pass in data, say pass in data like Josh, Jed, and Kyle, and you set the rule so it's saying, hey, on this outcome list, the list contains all of these as separate strings. So that when you pass in a single string that needs to be split, you can say, hey, this is what I expect. So again, like here's LeBron, Wade, and Bosch as an input as a single string, and then we're expecting an output of these. So if this flow is provisioned correctly, which who knows if it is, it'll all pass. And I can click through these things and say, oh, okay, here's that unit test rule that we were looking for in that 9.5, which we couldn't find. Again, this is back on 8, but you can see like, okay, the outcome list contained all of these things separately. So again, that's kind of just a provisioned rule that you might have, and that's how unit testing is going to work. So if you have a form in the middle or data in the middle, all that really matters is what are you passing into the flow and what are you passing out of the flow, so that you can get that kind of expected outcome, as we might word it. So again, on here, we have all these names, and we're trying to do something in this test. What are we trying to do? Capitalize the first name of a list, I think. We pass in all of these lower cases, and we want to pass out them capitalized. So we're making sure that, hey, we're just the list that we are passing out on our outcome path is this capitalized list relative to this input that we are passing in. So that's like the high level overview of unit testing. Is it's going to be a high level kind of pass through. Does that bring any clarity for you? Is there anything else I can kind of help you with on the unit testing? Oh, the problem is when there's a form, I need data to change on the form, and I want it to happen with my input during a unit test. The problem I have is that there's a form. I need data to change on the form, and I want to happen without my input during a unit test.
Yeah, so my hope is that, depending on which unit test I'm running, it'll use different data, or the input might be different, because I need the. You can come in. Oh, never mind. So I need the data to be, kind of changing. So, like, for instance, I actually only need one piece of the data to change, which is the type of format. The type of quote it is, whether it's a structured quote or a job quote, because that changes everything else down the line. After
So
that,
there's a form that has user input, and then the changes
yes,
are all happening here, and
yeah,
then you're
down the
expecting
line.
something here. So let's say, just analogy, I pass in Rob, I do something on the form that sends it down a specific path, and Rob turns into Robert, and you want to confirm that if I pass in Rob, it passes out Robert, and you know what the expected input and you know what the expected output is.
More so that the part where you actually type in Rob happens on the form, not so much the beginning of this.
So what happens on the form is Rob
Yeah,
is typing in Rob, and here, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead, man.
Oh, the beginning, the green part really is just pulling in data from the user, like their email and things like that, and passing it on through, and I'm keeping track of that. But the form is actually where the data is
Yeah,
created.
what if you made a a named input here. Let me clear out some of these drawings because I already kind of have a form already built out a little bit. What if you made an input here called like, testing the debug, whatever you might want to call it, man. Testing unit test. And then with this data, right, when I go to debug, that is now a variable for me. And you pass it into the form here and you say, okay, the name is no longer flow data name. It is testing debug, so that whatever data you come in through here hits the form and it says, and you can still get the quote from this green input, right? But you do have a variable that comes in here with an expected output. So if I type in, again, like maybe consumer, and then you can output a structured quote or something based on if it hits the form and it says, oh, consumer, go down this path and it'll come out as structured. A certain value might come out as structured. I mean, you could make a variable just for your debug process while you're building. If I go Rob, it'll auto-populate Rob right there. Then something happens and I'm expecting it. If Rob, then convert to Robert based on that data path, like all that work is done over here. And you're still utilizing the form and you're still kind of coming through and making changes on the form. And it might just be I'm confused about what the ask is. And I mean, that's almost certainly what it is here.
So I think if you go, Robert, if you go to unit testing on to the right, simulation testing.
Simulation test.
Yeah, so remember the form. So close this.
Oh, okay, on the right.
Yeah, and then on the right, enable simulation testing, and then go ahead and say in debugger. Check that box, in debugger. And so what that does, scroll down. Now what it will do is you can specify the name and the quote you're passing through without the form running. It will just run with that data. And so
Okay.
now when you
Yeah.
add like name of Rob and then quote of whatever it is for the value, then you can go ahead, then what you can do is then you can debug the flow or run the unit test, and then it will process that form as if you filled it out that way.
That's exactly what I want. But the only problem is I have multiple ways to fill up the form, and because the form is the main, data
Mhm.
driver of our process, I need all different outputs
Mhm.
of data like this. And simulation is great, but seems like I can only really use only
Well,
have one type of output from the simulation.
What if you selected from flow here and called this the testing debug? And
Well,
it'll take. Yep, go ahead, Jared.
I was gonna say to click in unit tests, that checkbox in simulation behavior, and then go ahead and click debug on the entire flow.
Okay, I think I got click debug on the entire flow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just curious what the unit test thing would be. Is there any new properties that loads there?
No.
Close out of this. I got one more test. Click on that again. No, the form. Close
again,
that.
okay.
Yeah, and then run unit test rule, and then edit that. And I'm wondering if maybe that could be utilized for it. You can create unit tests on the actual form itself. But still doesn't answer the question though of multiple times. The only way I can think about doing that is
Like if I could lock a simulation to a certain unit test, that would be great. That way when I'm running different unit tests,
yeah.
it runs that form. That'd be great.
Yeah, we don't have so I mean, there's some weird workarounds where you can copy the form 3 times and then run the form as a runtime selection for testing to see what it looks like to get the 3 options. But obviously that's not a production, you wouldn't do that in production or dev. Yeah, I don't think there is really a way to get it in there unless you define the object up at the top and then you have the form map in values from it and then you can pass it in that way. So go scroll down, selection, so select from flow.
Mm-hmm.
Already got testing debug, yeah, and then debug it that way. Debug, hit the actual debug. And then now what you can do is that's going to pass in through simulation mode with that value. And then you can have multiple unit tests that way.
Okay, so you're saying inside my step, add it as a input value, the testing data, this testing piece, and just for each piece I need to change, I need to actually add each piece. So if, you have first name and last name, I need both those to change. I now need to add in first name and last name again but like the testing version of it, so I can pass different data through.
Kinda. So yeah, you would have to create your unit test. Basically, what I'm saying is check simulation mode, and then select from flow and grab the variables from the input data. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
okay, go. Because then what you do is now the testing debug that Robert has, that's the data that's going to be passed into simulation mode on the form. So then you can create your 3 unit tests like Robert's doing, or his 2 unit tests, and run it. And then each unit test will say, okay, if it's Jared, it's fine. If it's if it's what do you call it? Another name, it's fine. But if it's anything else, then fail it. So that's how you could
But
connect the unit tests together.
that actually does work, but I still need to. It's kind of a redundancy though, isn't it? Like, because I have to add in basically all the fields I would want to change. That wouldn't be like a constant in the simulation. I would need to add to my input, right?
Well, you could pull them in dynamically. Talking about the first, like to get the input variable.
Yes.
Yeah, you need to create an input variable to bridge the gap. That is still true
Okay.
between the simulation mode and this.
And I would have to add in for every single field that I would want testing, like to change. Like here, testing debug, I'd have to make like 3 more of those for
Do you
everything
have a
that I want to
Yeah.
change.
well, not necessarily. Are you utilizing a composite object? Then you pass in the composite object, and then you merely change that.
Okay.
'Cause that's what actual like in coding that's what they would do. Like you would just pass in the object to whatever you're looking at, and you just update the properties on that object. But then you only need to pass one thing to each subroutine.
Right. So like I think just to kind of bring that through, like if I use a complex structure, I don't have anything built in here, but I can use like or something. Um, and like Jared said, you can kind of just fill out one and then copy the rest of them. So when you go to account, fill out, whatever Rob test, and then make changes to the field you want and duplicate it. So then you're just making one change across and all the other variables stay the same if you're passing in a complex type. Because this has, all this information associated with it. That's not the best example because it's account, but
Yeah, and so in that case, instead of creating 37 properties, you created one composite type property, and then you just updated the values you wanted.
yeah.
Oh, so what you're saying is I can just make a composite type or a data
You
structure
probably,
that contains
yeah.
all the fields that I need, and then just
Mhm.
pass it through once, and then change the parts I need.
Well, I presume that's what you'd be doing in your project,
Yeah,
right?
you
Like
already have
in
one. Yeah.
Robert, can you open up lending app, like the lending
Yeah.
application? So you can create an input on a form that just passes in an entire object, and then within the properties of that form, you specify to look at the sub properties of that composite type. So go to loan submission flow and just go to the first form. So click on the first form and then edit this. And I think this should have this should have an input object on it. Oh, it doesn't. Where did it go? Should have one.
Isn't it further on in the process?
It
It's
might
over
be
here.
further on the process. Yeah, go to the next trigger flow.
Yeah, it's
Data types, case entity, yeah. Either bar, yeah, try the bar upload that one, and then go into this one. And then click on that. That one looks right.
so just absorb these fields.
Exactly. So see how on the given inputs of the loan application, it's just one input. But each of the sub properties of that loan application is set to the form control. So now all you have to do is just pass in this case, our loan object, change, hey, the sender's Gregory. He's asking for a loan for $20,000, right? Here's all his information. And then, okay, that test ran fine. Okay, now Gregory had an 800 credit score. Now we're gonna run Jared, who's asking for 6 figures, and he has a 500 credit score, and see how that works, right? And so then you can test that out, but you don't have to create those 24 properties. You just have to pass in that one loan application object into it. And then it makes testing easier.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Cool. let's revisit Smith's question, and then we'll kind of work our way towards the end. So the question Smith has is, do we have to change the settings XML for using emails and decisions? Can we handle the same using the send mail components? We are getting a startlls error. Documentation asks us to change the server installation file. What is the best way here? Yes, in order to send, you'll have to update your SMTP settings, which can be done by adjusting the settings XML or by rerunning the installer, which will by proxy change the settings XML. But in order to send emails, if you don't have the settings XML provisioned, you're not going to be able to do it in the settings of the send email step. As far as I know, you still have to set up that SMTP server information because it needs to verify that you are that user, because you are kind of making an integration with a server, and in that capacity, you are making integration with Gmail or Outlook or whoever your provider is, because hypothetically here, I could go into a flow where I have an email step, and I could type in any information I want. Doesn't mean it's actually going to send. But there's no settings in here that you're going to be able to actually provide credentials to log in. You'll have to do it through settings XML, because again, hypothetically I could put, the Pope at Vatican.com. It doesn't mean it's actually going to send an email from the Pope at Vatican.com. You have to make all of those confirmations in your settings XML. So, if you need help with that, I would recommend maybe going through support, because it's not a super hard process, but you do need to make sure that you have your IT team on board as well as ours. And again, that's you're going to have to set up this type of server right here, because again, we need to make kind of an integration to be able to speak to them. And you can do it through the installer or by just adjusting the settings XML and then resetting your service. But if you're sending emails through decisions, you'll need to have this set up via that settings XML. There is no setting on the step that you can change to just kind of authenticate, as far as I know.
Got it. Thank you. So you suggest one of your team members be on board and our IT folks, and we do it that
Yeah,
way.
just because it's not you'll need to just make sure that you have all the information you need to set up that SMTP server. It's not as simple as just kind of putting in a password and hoping it works. You'll have to kind of know some stuff. And that you want it that way. It's a security thing. You don't want anyone to be able to send something from your email just because they know your password and stuff like that.
Sure. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. What other questions do we have, y'all? This was great. I've learned a lot too. Thank you, Jared, for all the help, and Alexander and everybody for the questions. What else do you guys have for me? I will gladly take anything you got for the next couple minutes. Just a friendly reminder, again, we're going to kind of take a week reprieve from just with all the holidays next week. I know most people have a lot of that week off anyways, but if you have questions, we will still be here. I will still be here. So feel free to email training@decisions.com or support@decisions.com. It's not like the whole company shuts down for a week, but just the lunch and learn kind of aspect, we're going to kind of take a quick reprieve from. But again, please email training or support if you have questions next week. We're not taking the whole week off. I will be here every day. When will this be uploaded? I would guess. I try to do it every single day by the end of the day. Most of the time it ends up being by the end of my day, so around 5 p.m. I would guess it's probably going to be uploaded, between 3 and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is, in the next hour to 3 hours. And again, I put them all on YouTube. I'll kind of load it up over here. I put them all on the decisions channel. So here's these aren't in order. Here's yesterday's, there's the day before, kind of going through in order here. I do have them all up there. But they're also timestamped. So if you go through here, you can look at the questions that were asked and say, okay, click on this and get to that particular part of the question, wherever it might be. But yeah, hopefully within an hour to 3 hours. I like to take a lunch right after this, and then I usually get right on it. Any other final questions? We got about 5 minutes left. I'll gladly take another one. Again, this has been very nice. We're bouncing out, it looks like. So I'll go ahead and call it a session. Thank you very much. Again, if you have questions, feel free to email training@decisions.com or support, and they can help you through some of that more, nuanced stuff. So thank you guys very much. Happy holidays. See you when I see you. Thank you very much.